Hey everybody, Peach here, and today we're going to do something I thought would never happen. Today we're going to review the Mikolo M4 version 2.0. This is a half rack for doing several exercises such as benching and squatting. It has a functional trainer, it has a Smith machine, a multi-grip pull-up bar, a landmine, dip bars, barbell storage, plate storage, and attachment storage. Now, quick backstory, in 2024, I reviewed the M4 version 1.0, and to say I did not like it is an understatement. In fact, I said I had zero interest in ever working with this company again because I hated it that much. Now, flash forward over the past year, the company has been releasing new products, and the quality of those products seems to have skyrocketed. And then they reached out to me and said, hey, based on your feedback, we've designed the M4 version 2.0. Now, I think everyone deserves a shot at redemption, and I certainly want to review the product that I help influence the redesign of, so here we are. So let's check it out and see if the M4 version 2.0 is worthy of your hard-earned dollars. Now, I want to point out that there are three variations of the Mikolo M4 2.0. You have the standard version, which includes plastic pulleys and a plate-loaded functional trainer. Then one step up from that, you have the Ultra, which includes aluminum pulleys, but still has that plate-loaded functional trainer. And then you have the Elite version. This includes aluminum pulleys paired with selectorized weight stacks, which are 132 pounds each. Now, I have the Elite package here, so that is specifically what we're going to be reviewing today. And yes, let me disclose, the Mikolo did send me this for free in exchange for the review, but as you will see, that does not change the outcome of this review. Now, we're going to start with some high-level measurements because if this will not fit in your space, there's no use in watching the rest of the video, right? So it is 87 inches tall by my measurement, and it is 71 inches deep, as measured from the front feet all the way back to those back feet. Now, it is 47 1/8 inches wide if measuring from the outside of this upright to the outside of that upright, and it is 74.8 inches wide if measuring the length of the Smith machine's barbell. Now let's talk shipping and assembly. FedEx delivered it, and it all arrived in good condition. It came in multiple boxes, and almost everything was in really good condition, except for a few tiny scratches here and there on some components, but nothing that was a cause for concern. The only issue I had was that the two front uprights were slightly dented at the very top of the uprights. This prevented me from sliding the trolley down the top of those uprights like you're supposed to do per the instructions, but instead I just slid them from the bottom up and they worked just fine. The dent did not affect the performance of the equipment in any way, and it's not even noticeable after assembly. Now, I spent about 10 hours putting this together by myself. Had I known that there was an assembly video, that probably would have been reduced by 25% because the written instructions are a little lacking where they try to cram too many steps into one step. So if you're gonna get this, I highly encourage you to use that video. Now, on with the review. Let's go from the top to the bottom, from the front to the back, covering each component all along the way, talking about the good and the bad. All right, let's start with the pull-up bar. So it is a multi-grip pull-up bar, allowing for neutral grips, angled grips, and pronated grips. It used to only have knurling on one of those grips, but now there's knurling on the angled grips, the neutral grips, and these wide grips, okay? Now, it is 86.25 inches tall as measured from the top surface of the pull-up bar. My only critique is it is 25.4 millimeters thick per my measurement, so the thinner the material, the more it's gonna dig into your hands, and if this was a little thicker, say 28 millimeters, it would be a bit more comfortable. Now, as far as the front uprights, in my review of the version 1.0, this was one of my biggest gripes. They were advertising 14 gauge steel, but I measured it at somewhere between 16 and 17 gauge steel. And just so you know, the higher the number on the gauge of steel, the thinner it is. Okay, now, I measured this too. It's not 14 gauge steel either. It's actually thicker than that. I'm measuring it at about 13 gauge steel. So this is a huge improvement. Now, just like the version 1, we have 1-inch holes, but unlike the version 1, the version 2.0 now has 2-inch hole spacing instead of 4-inch hole spacing. So you're getting 34 holes here on these uprights, allowing more adjustability and precision in where you set your J-hooks and your spotter arms. Now, speaking of the J-hooks and spotter arms, those are also improved. Instead of a little hook with plastic on it, you're now getting really tall, beefy, sandwich-style J-hooks and longer spotter arms. Now, I reached out to Mikolo to confirm the advertised weight capacities of the J-hooks and spotter arms. So when the J-hooks are used as a pair, they're advertising a 1,000 pound static load capacity, and for the spotter arms, when used as a pair, they're advertising an 800 pound static weight capacity, okay? And yes, I measured the thickness of the spotter arms, and those two are measuring at approximately 13 gauge steel. Now, this information is going to be especially important for my taller viewers. The highest setting of the J-hooks is going to be 68 inches as measured from the bottom of the pocket here where the barbell goes down to the ground. That's when you set the J-hook above the functional trainer's trolley. If you set the J-hook below the functional trainer's trolley, it is 64 inches from that pocket to the ground. Now, the reason why you can do this is because the cable is so close to the front uprights, it doesn't really interfere with the path of the barbell. For contrast, my Rep Fitness PR5000 paired with the Aries 1.0, the cable is so far away from the uprights that there is interference, and therefore you can't really use the J-hooks above the functional trainer trolley. So the fact that you can do this is awesome, especially if you're tall. Now, the minimum height of the spotter arms is at the very bottom hole. So the surface of these spotter arms is only 7 inches from the ground, which is crazy low. So you have no problems getting as low as possible. And that's because these spotter arms are so low profile, okay? They don't have a lot of buttressing of steel here. Now, of course, that does compromise the weight capacity to some degree. The more buttressing, the higher the weight capacity. But if you want to get really low, these low profile spotter arms are great for that purpose. All right, now let's talk about the powder coat. So the powder coat is okay. I would say it's on par with everything that I've received from Mikolo, Saidi, GMWD, RitFit, Major Fitness, all those budget brands. Okay, it's nothing great, but it's not terrible. Based on the scratches that I've already put on it using it, this is not going to hold up against a lot of abuse for years to come, but it's totally in alignment with the price point for all these other all-in-one racks in this price range. All right, now let's talk about the functional trainer. So with the version 1.0, you had plastic pulleys, and that was your only option. You had a plate-loaded functional trainer, and that was your only option. With this, you can upgrade to the aluminum pulleys, and you can upgrade to twin 132-pound weight stacks with loadable weight horns to add more weight or to add incremental weight. If you still opt for the plate-loaded functional trainer, instead of those stacks, you're gonna get 2 of these, okay? 2 of these trolleys. And these weight horns have about 7 3/4 inches of loadable space on each one of these weight horns. Okay, now either way, it's a 2-to-1 ratio, meaning 50 pounds will feel like 25 pounds. Okay, now the benefit of the 2-to-1 ratio is smoother operation and longer cable travel, which in this case is 93 inches. So that should be sufficient for just about any exercise you're gonna be doing. So now let's test the accuracy of this 2-to-1 ratio and the accuracy of those plates. So I set the stack to 44 pounds, so that should give us 22 pounds of resistance. So I got my scale here, let's test it. So it should come out at 22 pounds, and as you can see, it sure does. Now the trolley of the functional trainer can be adjusted by simply pulling a pop pin and setting it to your desired height, finding the hole, and letting it click. Now the lowest it can be set is all the way down here, and the tip of that ball, just so you know, is about 14 inches from the ground, so it can get pretty low. This is the highest it can go, and that's 76 inches from the tip of that ball down to the ground. Now it does have a plastic lining. I would prefer rollers because it would be a bit more smooth, but you know, it's not a great concern. You can still do it one-handed, which is pretty nice. Now as far as the supply D handles, you have a pretty nice D handle here. It's not knurled metal or anything, which is what I prefer, but I have zero complaints about this. These are really rubbery and they're textured here, and you're not going to lose your grip on these. So I really don't have any complaints on these whatsoever. However, I do have some complaints about other things when it comes to this functional trainer. Let's get into it. All right, critique number one. So there's no hole in the head plate for me to stick my selector pin. It's blocked by the bracket which attaches these weight horns here. So when I just want to use the top plate, I have nowhere to stick this thing. So what I do is, since it's magnetized, I just kind of lay it here and let it stick there, and it shouldn't fall off. But of course, ideally, you would have an offset hole for me to just stick this in to guarantee it wouldn't fall off. All right, critique number two. So these weight horns allow you to add more weight or to add incremental weight when the next plate in the stack is too heavy for the given exercise. My only problem with these weight horns is there's only 4 3/8 inches of loadable sleeve space on these weight horns. So I would prefer them to be longer so that you could add even more weight. All right, next critique. So if you have your bench inside the rack and maybe the Smith machine barbell's in the way, you don't want to have to squeeze past all that stuff to set your weight stack. So instead of giving only 2 sets of stickers, I would love it if they would give you 4 sets. So you could put stickers on both sides of the stack and allow you to set your stacks from outside the rack on the sides. All right, next critique. So this is a piece of plastic, and I think it could be higher quality. This is what houses the guide rods and keeps them in place. So I don't think it's gonna crack or anything, but I just think it could be better quality. Now my biggest gripe is that I think that these guide rods are actually too small for the holes in the stack. And as a result, there's a little wobble. Now, that's usually not a problem. As long as I don't add any weights to these weight horns, it is smooth as hell. Now, the second I add 5 pounds to just one side, now this pin is kind of cockeyed and it's hitting that bottom plate. Okay, if I add 10 pounds, now it's unusable. Right? It's stuck. So what you have to do is, if you want to add weight, you have to keep it balanced. So if I want to add 10 pounds, I have to put 5 pounds on both sides. And now it's smooth as hell again and it's not getting stuck. If they just made these guide rods a little thicker or the holes in the stack a little smaller, it wouldn't have that amount of slop in it and we wouldn't have this issue. All right, now let's talk about this Smith machine. So it has a 30mm thick shaft. It's got a nice powder coat and pretty decent knurling. It's not aggressive, but you can feel it. Now, knurling's not super important on the Smith machine, but it sure is nice to have it. It just feels good. Okay, now it weighs 36 pounds without any plates, according to my measurement, and it is 74.8 inches long, and it has an advertised 800-pound static weight capacity. Now the sleeves have 11 and 13/16, according to my measurements, of loadable sleeve space. Now I have 25 pounds on both sides. So, okay, it's got bearings and it is smooth. I really like this. So this is 1,000 times better than the V1. And it doesn't matter if my hands aren't equidistant in the center. If I slide over, there's no kinking. Even if I just go one side, way over here, no kinking, okay? And it has 12 pegs on each side for setting your Smith machine barbell height, as well as the Smith machine safety hooks. Now the highest it can be stored is way up here, okay? So I can walk underneath this to get my attachments and set my weight stacks and never worrying about ducking or hitting my head, because this is 73.25 inches as measured from the bottom of the barbell all the way to the ground, okay? Now, that's the highest you can store it, and I absolutely love that feature. Okay, now as far as range of motion, you can go anywhere from 76.25 inches from the ground, that's way up here, all the way down to here. Okay, now that is actually 17 and 1/8 from the ground. So you still probably can't deadlift using this unless you're standing on something, but certainly more than enough for something like barbell rows. Now I really only have one critique of the Smith machine. Other than that, I really like it, and that's this. These rubber pieces here, they look like a Labrador chewed on them. Right here and right there, okay? So if I were to pay for this myself, I'd probably ask for them to be replaced. But it doesn't affect the performance of the barbell in any way, but I thought I'd still mention it. Now, one of the biggest improvements that they made between the Smith machine and the functional trainer is that there's no longer any conflicts between 450 millimeter plates on these components. So if you don't know, 450 millimeters is the diameter of just about every bumper plate out there, as well as most 45-pound iron plates. And as a result of them hitting each other, you had to unrack one component to use the other. But now they're spaced out better, so there's no conflicts between these components. And as you can see, even with 450 millimeter plates, these aren't touching, and they're not even touching here on the plate storage weight horns. So that's a very good fix. Good job, Mikolo. All right, now let's talk about plate storage. So you have 3 weight horns on each side of the rack. Having them on the side is preferred because if you had them on the back, you couldn't access the plates if you had to push this all the way against the wall to save space. So I love that they're on the sides. Now you can put 450 millimeter plates on the center and on the bottom. The top one is for change plates only, because if you had anything bigger than change plates, you would have interference between 450 millimeter plates on the functional trainer here and that top weight horn, okay? But you don't have interference between this weight horn and 450 millimeter plates here. So that's great. And you have 8 inches of loadable sleeve space on each one of these weight horns. As far as construction, you have a 1-inch rod going through there, and this has a plastic cover on top of that 1-inch rod. All right, now let's talk about all the included attachments. So, in addition to getting the included J-hooks, spotter arms, and D-handles, you're also getting 4 band pegs, a landmine, a T-bar row handle, tricep rope, dip bars, a lat pull-down bar, a straight bar, an ankle strap, 6 barbell clamps, and a 3-in-1 thigh pad, foot plate, and step. Now this 3-in-1 pad is pretty cool. In this configuration, it's a low row foot plate, but when I pull this pop pin, it becomes a step. So if you're too short to be able to grab the pull-up bar, you can set this up and make that your step to be able to reach that. Also, it's got padding underneath so that you can use it for lat pull downs to hold your body down. And as you can see, when I'm jumping up and down on this thing, it's pretty well attached. Now I do have some comments on this lat pull down bar. So it has a fixed connection point, whereas the straight bar has a rotating attachment point. I would love it if this thing also had that rotating attachment point. Now they both have, I don't know if it's a urethane or what it is, but it's very durable. I'll just call it rubber. It's very durable. This is not cheap foam. And I like having this because if you've ever worked out with a metal bar in the middle of winter in a garage, this is nice to have because your hands will be much more comfortable on this as opposed to bare metal. All right, now let's talk about attachment storage. So with the version 1.0, we had 4 rusty hooks right here at eye level. Now we have 4 nice hooks capable of storing all these attachments, and we have a crossbar right here with holes capable of storing your spotter arms, dip bars, and J-hooks. Love it. My only critique is there's nowhere for me to store this guy when it's not in use, okay? What I would need is 2 holes with 2-inch hole spacing to put these little nubs in, and you could put it on the front, you could put it on the back, or ideally both, and I could store this as well. That would be a great improvement. Now, if you need more than these 4 hooks for attachments like, D handles, tricep ropes, things like that, you could also always go to Amazon and just get some of these magnet hooks, and you can stick these on the back or even on the logo plates on the sides, and you can add more attachments that way. All right, now let's talk about barbell storage. So you can store 2 barbells on the back of the rack. What they did is they reinforced those brackets, made them stronger, and they added a plastic lining to prevent your barbell from getting scratched up by the bracket. Just note that the top of that cup there is 19 inches from the ground. So you might not have the ceiling clearance to be able to store these vertically, but if you're in a garage, you should have no problems. All right, the Mikolo M4 version 2.0. They fixed every major gripe I had with the 1.0. Now, as I pointed out, it's still not perfect, but it is light years better than the original M4. And in my opinion, can definitely now be considered as a contender for your hard-earned dollars. For more details, just visit the corresponding article at designbuildlift.com. And to purchase this or any Mikolo product, please consider making those purchases by first clicking on my affiliate link located down in the video description below. Shopping via that link costs you nothing extra, and it helps support the channel. All right, that does it for this episode, and I look forward to seeing you again in the next episode. So be sure to subscribe to the channel to be alerted the moment the next episode drops.